Hello everyone, Boone here. I am going to show you some of my retro sci-fi inspired ray guns right here on Beyond the Brick. Hey there everybody, welcome back. This video is sponsored by the wonderful folks over at slabdreamlab.com. They have sent me a number of amazing printed base plates, and this is one of their awesome space base plates. It's massive, and I decided to use it in this video to, I've got it mounted upright in my studio here. I've placed some of these brick-built holders onto the surface of the base plate, and I am hanging my retro space ray guns here. Let's dive in. This is the very first one that I built, and I call it Galactic Zapper. It is intended to stand on its own, so the foot at the base of the handle, is designed to support the weight of the front of the ray gun, and it is designed to fit into my hand. So this is sort of like a 1-to-1 scale. This is a life-size prop of a ray gun. This is a ray gun that I did a freestyle build. All of my ray guns are freestyle build. I just sort of like dig through the parts I have at my disposal and decide how I want to put them together to come up with, sort of these classic sci-fi inspired ray guns. This one I actually built just standing at the bulk bins at a local bricks and minifigs store. So this is a store that we have in Portland, and there are a number of locations across the United States, and they have just tables full of used brick. And so I just stood there for maybe 2.5 or 3 hours one day and dug through what they had and put this thing together out of my imagination. And when I was done, I showed it to them and said, hey, how much do you want to charge me for this many pieces? And they thought that it would probably fit into a $20 bag if I took it apart, so they charged me $20 for it. Here, I'll show you a few of the features. The trigger on this one does have a little bit of springy trigger action, and that's just because there's one part in there, one Technic sort of axle piece that is hinging on, and it's just a bit flexible. So I'll show you, that aspect on each one of these ray guns and let you know kind of how they go. You can see how I've got the handle is just sort of brick built, studs up here, and then I've got some, sort of decorative elements here that fit on the outside of the handle. If I can get them lined up right, and it's about like that. Okay, and so that's how, I just sort of like get this angled handle section going here. I'll pull off the side. Let's see. I think it's fun to show how this stuff comes together, so I'll see what I can show you. This is the whole back piece, and this is just assembled on a Technic axle, and you can see that these pieces are just sort of like stacked up onto a Technic axle, and this is like I think a fire department, helicopter water bucket or something like that. And you'll see this in multiple places throughout my ray guns. This is, stacking elements from the front to the back or vice versa on Technic axles is one of the ways that I kind of get these shapes. And then you can look inside here and you can kind of see how I've built these. I think they're like the base of airplane hulls, and they are studs in. So what you get out here are the anti-studs underneath this, but those holes have Technic holes in the bottom. So I can put those Technic pins stud out and then get, this decorative element right on the outside there. And you see just a little bit of that anti-stud, but, I don't mind. I feel like almost anything in this type of build is just adds to the aesthetic, and then that actually gets covered up a little bit by those when I stick that on there. This is the first ray gun that I built, and it remains one of the most popular among people who see it. And I think it's because, people see, these kind of like fin shapes up here, and it just is really reminiscent to them of, kind of an old classic throwback science fiction type look. And I really like the color scheme. I've got just a little bit of light gray in here, but mostly it is red and dark grays and the transparent neon green. All of my ray guns are pretty much symmetrical, so you're going to see it looks basically exactly the same on this side as it does on this side. This will always be one of my favorites. The second that I built is this yellow ray gun right here. This is a ray gun that I call the 21st Century Yeller. I think 21st Century Yeller, and it's sort of like Yeller is the a pun on the color of this blaster is yellow, and Yeller, like it would make a loud noise when you shoot it. And the 21st Century comes from this stickered element that has a 21 on it, and I believe that element is from I'm gonna get it wrong here. I don't remember. Maybe it was like some sort of Aqua team, or maybe that was just like Alpha team or something like that. But the 21 is on there, and I left the sticker, and that was something I mentioned in about the Galactic Zapper that most of these are symmetrical, and this one kind of is the exception, but just barely. These two bars here originally were two different bars, and one stuck out a little bit farther, and I thought it was kind of neat, to have just a little bit of asymmetricality. And then in addition to this stickered element, I've got some printed elements and other sticker elements, so you see that this side of the Zapper with this printed caution stripe and this sticker here, and then this side with, we've got these caution chevrons with like kind of like a printed pipe pattern on there. This one is just a little bit different when you look at it from each side. This one also does not stand on its own, so it can only lay down on its side, or I can prop it up on some type of display similar to what you saw at the beginning of this video. But I did want to get a different. This was my second build. I built this some months after the Galactic Zapper, and I wanted the back handle here to just be a little bit something different, and I used these wheel elements and this molded plastic tire element, and it's not as rigid, it's not as sturdy, but I like the look of it. And then I used sort of these bar and Technic connector assemblies, to have sort of like a trigger guard here. And one thing about this one is you can see that the trigger does have like a trigger action, and that is caused by sort of like a rubber Technic bushing in there, that the trigger can be squished up against that rubber and then it sort of bounces back. This one really, it's a little bit bulkier than I like. I really like the shape of this fin that I got up here on the back of the ray gun. This was also sort of my first stab at just a really long nozzle out here on the front. And again, this has like a long Technic axle going down the center of the barrel there. And I like this. I think it's maybe my third favorite of the four ray guns that I'm showing you today. That is the 21st Century Yeller. And as I hang this one up, I just gotta say that like the clutch power on this board, sideways, studs facing out, with just some bricks assembled to be the holders for these ray guns, seems pretty stable. I don't know that I would leave this up as like a permanent display, but for the purposes of this video and perhaps for a short-term display, this could be a viable option. Next up, we've got the third ray gun that I built. This is what I call the Brick Rogers ray gun. And it also does not stand on its own, so I'll lay it down for just a moment while I tell you what inspired this build. The retro spaceman from the
Series 17 collectible minifigures. Let me see if I can give you a close-up of his ray gun here. That is his ray gun, and this was just a quick, you know, wham bam, one evening I wanted to make somewhat of a life-size replica of the ray gun minifigure accessory that came with that Series 17 figure. This one is probably the simplest of all of the designs. It is the one that I threw together the quickest. It is probably my least favorite, but it also is something that doesn't need to have a lot of detail, you know, as it's just sort of intended to be kind of a blown-up version of a minifigure accessory. I'll take this one apart a little bit too, so that you can see a little bit about what's going on inside the structure of this thing. So the very center of the ray gun is built all studs up from the bottom to the top. And then you see I've got this whole side built studs out, and this, you know, uses Technic pins to kind of pin into the center of the ray gun. And then between the two sides, we've got these snot pieces that are studs pointing down, so we get more tile. And these this is a regular slope, but it sort of takes the purpose of an inverted slope. And I'll put this right back together here if I can. Yep, that's good. That goes together there well. I'm using a combination of dark gray, light gray, and chrome elements out here on the tip, and that's really just to kind of emphasize the you know, the contours between them. You know, I think these different steps of what the nozzle here might get lost if it was all the same color, so I'm just sort of breaking it up with those different colors. And I liked the chrome. It was a piece that I just happened to have laying around. It would be cool if more of this thing was chrome, or it would be cool if the entire thing was, you know, one solid color, like the minifig accessory. But either way, you know, I'm pretty pleased with it for just being kind of a quick little wham bam throw together model. And so that takes us to the fourth ray gun that I built. This is one that I call the Steam Beam, and I may be saving the best for last. While I will always have a special place in my heart for that very first Galactic Zapper, this is my most recent ray gun, and I think it is currently my favorite. This is in a steampunk, you know, sort of color scheme, so I call this the Steam Beam. And this one is also designed to stand on its own. It is designed to be held, you know, as all of these in my hand. This is a one-to-one prop. But this one is designed to be really sturdy. You know, this is a technique for getting the angle of the handle down that I hadn't used before. I've got a series of 2 stacked ball joints here that, you know, are sort of offset by one stud. Actually, I'll show you how that works. If I pull this piece off, you can see that these ball joint receivers are sort of stacked with one plate between them. These balls are stacked with no plate between them, and they're offset by a stud, so that creates this angle. And you can see that pretty much the entire body of this ray gun is built studs forward, and it's kind of like a 4x4 stack, you know, with studs out so that I can add the details around. And this ray gun actually has what I believe is the longest Technic axle. It's a 32 stud long Technic axle, and it runs all the way from, I think, right here inside this cone, all the way through these wheels. These are big golden wagon wheels, through these 2x2 round bricks, through these gold, you know, these are pearl gold wheel wells like you would see in like a lot of Batmobile minifigure scale Lego sets, and then through some 4x4 round bricks, and then into that stack of, you know, it's a 4x4 stack of snot bricks that are facing forward, and it terminates, you know, down here somewhere. So you can see here's a 16 by 16. If that went from like there to there and then there to there, that Technic axle runs from about here all the way out to the beginning of this nozzle tip. I really enjoyed building this one. I had been collecting gold and pearl gold elements for quite some time. I think I pulled this piece or something similar to this piece right off of like some kind of sleigh, model and modified it a little bit and stuck it right on. I really liked these pearl gold gates like from the front of a castle, and I sort of think about that as something that would like be sort of maybe like a heat sink that would help this thing cool off, and maybe there's water running through there and this is some sort of steam generated thing. We've got sort of like these elephant trunk pieces back here on the back of this fin and up here for the trigger. So this trigger is hinged. It will pull once or twice and then it's sort of like done and you have to kind of reset it. But again, this is designed to be held, and I could run around with this thing and point it in different directions, and I could pretend to pull the trigger there a couple times if I wanted to. Like I said, I think this is probably my favorite so far. I'm working on instructions for this actually so that I can share this with some people and let some other folks build it. And so that's the fourth ray gun that I have built in my collection. I have ideas for more, and I want to keep going with these things. I think they're really cool. These are inspired a lot by like the work of Ryan Nagata, a really wonderful ray gun artist in the prop building world. You see this kind of stuff through Weta Workshop. I try not to look at specific ray gun designs when I design these. I just like to dig into my parts. I think about inspiration from the kinds of things that I've seen in this sort of vintage sci-fi realm, and I just go for it, and the parts really dictate what the items are going to become. But I think they look really awesome up against this Slab Dream Lab background. If you want to know more about Slab Dream Lab, or you want to see what products they have to offer, you can check them out at slabdreamlab.com. And again, thanks to the folks over there for sending me some really wonderful printed base plates to show you in these videos. If you want to see more of my builds, you can check me out at Boone Builds on Instagram. And don't forget to subscribe to Beyond the Brick if you want to see Lego related videos every day. Until next time, thanks for watching.